So Cynthia Bailey and her humble brag co-host Crystal Kung Minkoff, they believe that Shamea crossed a line when she brought up the mama drama on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, season 17, episode 15. Before we do that, make sure you guys tap that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and tap the link in the descriptions down below, and you can find access to the Faceless Content course. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into it. So, Cynthia's podcast comes out. I feel like it probably comes out on Mondays, but I'm not really sure. Somebody might have to correct me if I'm wrong. But shout out to our friends over at No Chaser because they posted this. So, in this clip, I just thought it was so interesting listening to Cynthia as she talks about how she doesn't believe that Porsha and Shamea can find any resolve after this whole situation with Shamea bringing up Porsha's mom. Okay. Now, I position the statement as such because that is how it is positioned in the show, okay, in the episode. And I can't help but feel like Cynthia has a slight blind spot in this regard. And I think it's because it happened on this show. Now, here's the thing. Shamea's outburst about the mama drama, the accusation that Porsha's mom allegedly tried to sleep with Shamea's dad, who Porsha says that the man ain't had no teeth in years, according to Porsha allegedly, which I'm assuming is her rationale for why her mama would not want Shamea's dad. But I don't know if the man is walking around with just the gums. I'm not really sure. I don't really feel like I see a lot of her dad, but I got a lot of family that's just, got some gums, I think. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm from the country, so you liable to see anything, okay? But anyway, I digress because this ain't about me. This, not homeless or toothless, hopefully. Especially if Jimmy got all this money, baby, get them teeth fixed. Go to that same person that Kelly went to and get the man some teeth. But I feel like he got some teeth in his mouth. I digress. Anyway, so they talk about, and here's the thing. Absolutely. If you bring up my mama, we're never going to speak again. I'm never talking to you again. Period. Like, never. So I do agree with what Cynthia is saying here. And I do understand, I think, Cynthia's perspective and I think Crystal's perspective as well, because they're looking at the episode in a vacuum, right? They're thinking about what has transpired in this moment. But there was also previous moments where the moms were discussed and nobody had nothing to say. Nobody had nothing to say one way or another. Now, perhaps it is because the tea that Shamea dropped was so explosive that I think that probably is the reason why Cynthia is saying that. And yeah, once that happens, it's a wrap. But once it was brought up at the reunion last season and then again online, that would have been a wrap too. Okay. So we would have wrapped this thing up 2 incidents ago, in my opinion. But I don't know that Cynthia and Crystal look at that because I'm assuming that they're just wrapped up in the current episode and perhaps what Cynthia was feeling in that moment. And because she was there and it was so explosive, maybe that's where she's looking. But I'm trying to give Cynthia grace because I feel like I don't want to be one of those types of people that just automatically assumes that because Cynthia is employed as a Go Naked, that she does not have a mind of her own. Although sometimes I feel like she is a bit partial to Porsha, probably because she's worked with her longer. So I feel like that relationship is a bit stronger than it may be with Shamea. And because Shamea's mic drop was so explosive that it kind of shook the table. It definitely shook the room. So I'm assuming that that could be it, but y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. I think at times I want to view Cynthia as the voice of reason. And what I've had to come to the conclusion of is that Cynthia is not going to be the voice of reason. Cynthia is going to be Cynthia. Okay. And that could be very different from us thinking that she is going to be a neutral party, and also the voice of reason. Cynthia can only be Cynthia. Okay? And you could take from that what you will. That's not an insult. That's not a knock. That is simply saying, I'm going to take her off of this pedestal and I'm going to place her where she belongs in her own category as Cynthia Bailey and not a caricature who is supposed to do this or that. And I think also, too, and I know a lot of people get upset by these shows and they trigger us sometimes. It happens to me, too. What I have to always remind myself is to observe and not absorb. I think it's very easy to get caught up in, you could feel like you are maybe not necessarily Team Shamea, but you can feel like, I don't like the dog piling, like when they do the gangbang and it feels like one person is being targeted. Also, too, you could also be Team Porsha or maybe not Team Porsha, but also feel like she's in the right too. And you can become really justified in your stance. But what happens is that I've noticed is that it distracts from my enjoyment of the show if I become too invested in one side or the other. So I try to, as much as I can, look at both sides because I think that there's some right on both sides. I do. I do. And I think that the history is too deep and too complex, layered, and nuanced to solely pick one side and feel like one person is right, especially when the dynamics are so historical. Like the historical context for this friendship goes back years. So Phaedra, when she was on, I think there was one podcast that she was on, she says, I'm not trying to be in the middle of it because it does go back so far. And for some of that, she was actually a part of it. And in other news, we have a little bit of a spoiler for you guys. Oh, yes. Our friends over at OMFG Reality TV happen to post a clip of next week's episode. So if you don't want to be spoiled, let me go ahead and warn you right now. So you've been warned. You can either skedaddle or you can continue to watch this video. Watch my lips on mute, okay? But this is a sneak peek for next week. And in it, this is I'm assuming it's like a Halloween party hosted by Shamea, in which Kelli arrives as Wonder Woman, and she is actually with Jarvis, who has on an Iron Man mask. Now, Jarvis makes this first appearance officially on the show. So we were wondering a while back, like, why even bring this person up if we cannot see this person? I mean, that was what I wanted to know as well. So now we finally do see him, but he is masked. But what we find out is the reason why he is masked. It is not necessarily because he needs to protect his identity. It is because Kelli wants to protect his identity from the ex. Now, with everything going on between Kelli and her ex, I could definitely understand that. But here is the gotcha. At some point in time, I would assume that if you are dating this man who I think she says she's in love with, then and he is not married, then I would also have to wonder if in some way, shape, or form, your ex still wouldn't find out who this man is. Okay. Now, granted, if he shows his face on TV, it's definitely a lot easier. But I'm assuming your ex-husband has eyes and ears. Okay. And I'm assuming y'all go out of the house. So, based on your post with Shamea from maybe about a month or so ago, you guys were out for dinner. So, I'm sure there were other people out that night that could probably attest to who you're dating. Phaedra also co-signs that this man is indeed real, okay? And this is not some paid person in a mask here who is cosplaying as Kelli's man Jarvis. But I still think Jarvis is a code name, right? And then he said Tony Stark, and that's basically Iron Man that I told you guys about before. So it's fitting that he's in the Iron Man mask because now it makes sense. So Phaedra does attest to the fact that this man is real, and she says he is good looking. So there is that. But what is also interesting is that we knew from this past episode that Mr. George, aka Crash to Cash, is also going to be at this party. Now, What we did not know, at least I did not know, was that Mr. Crash to Cash, his wife, Ashley, is also going to be introduced in this scene. Now, no word on whether or not Ashley could potentially be in the mix for next season of the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I guess we'll have to see how this episode goes. But I just thought that this bit of information was quite intriguing and that you guys might want to know about this. So definitely head on over to OMFG Reality TV's page so that you can actually get, all the details for yourself, come to your own conclusions, and then come back here and let us know what you think. How about that? All right. With that being said, make sure you guys like this video, and I will catch you, of course, in the next one.